Instead of trying to change the white man in your mind and make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionless movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalist. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Peace and Black Power families, brother Agyei Tyehimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach Black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up. Today, we're going to be talking about a proper and effective way to handle critiques and disagreements from community members. But before we get into that, it's a very quick commercial about an upcoming
Malcolm X said, "We need to wake up, clean up, and stand up." Asada Shakur wrote, "It's not enough just to change the system. We need to change ourselves."
Educator, author, activist, and empowerment coach Agyei Tyehimba took these two principles and used them to write his new book, Ukusu.
This book is a tool anyone seeking to become empowered can utilize to become a community asset rather than a community liability.
Ukusu will help you develop the character, thinking, and behavior necessary to rescue and liberate our individual and collective village.
Featuring straightforward information and beautiful reaffirming images,
this book, combined with your practical application of its principles, will help you to transform yourself and transform our people. Starting on August 9th, 2024, go get your discounted copy of Ukusu, an empowerment handbook by Agyei Tyehimba.
Starting on August 9th, 2024, go to Amazon and get your copy.
All right, family, that was our brief commercial about my new book, Ukusu, a self-empowerment handbook. So today we're talking about handling critique. And I think it's important that I frame this properly because I think this message is for anyone listening, but I'm framing it specifically for community organizers, leaders, people like that, maybe in the home, in our community. Why? Because let me explain. The only way in this lifetime that you will avoid critique is by doing nothing, creating nothing, proposing nothing, right? Leaders and organizers are going to always attract critiques and criticism because we're always sharing ideas about strategy, tactics, proposals and our opinions on different issues, right? So therefore, if you're a person that's in leadership or some type of activist or community organizer, you should anticipate criticism. You should anticipate and expect critique from the community, and you should be prepared for it. So that's to say that when you're advocating a specific idea, you're supporting a certain candidate, or you're against a certain candidate, or you're trying to create a movement, or whatever you're trying to do, you should see the places where your ideas are soft or have weaknesses or blind spots or gaps. And you should first of all get rid of the soft spots and the gaps, but you should anticipate people's points of attacks on your proposals or your ideas, right? And you should prepare for them. And you prepare for them by doing research, by tightening up your logic and your rationality, by having facts and arguments to support what you say. That's very important, right? Secondly, about critiques and criticisms. When people give us respectful and valid critiques, meaning we may not like them, may not agree with them, but what they're saying is valid, is plausible, right? Those type of critiques and criticisms help us learn. They help us grow. They help us see things that we missed, things we need to answer for or account for in our proposals and our ideas, right? And if we're honest, even when the critiques are invalid, completely off, completely wrong, right? Completely mean-spirited and ugly, even those type of critiques and criticisms teach us how to handle attack, how to diffuse people's argument, how to block that stuff effectively, right? So let me first say that no matter what the critique is, no matter who's giving you the critique, no matter if it's done in a respectful way, if it's valid and rational, if it's invalid and irrational and disrespectful, never get defensive. Never get defensive. Don't take it personally. Understand, if you're proposing something, people have the right to agree or to disagree. That's just nature, right? All right. Having said that, I think it's important to understand, as I kind of implied earlier, some people are going to come to you with legitimate critiques or criticisms. They might say, hey, man, I noticed when you talk about this issue, you're only addressing it. It sounds like it's kind of bashing women, or it's kind of being dismissive of women, or what have you. And then you go back and say, you know what? Now that I think about it, I could see why somebody would think that, right? So that's a valid and sincere critique. And then you're going to have critiques and criticisms that are coming from people who don't like you. They're always going to critique what you say, even when they agree with it, because they don't like you. So they're coming to you with criticism and critique is not legitimate. They simply want to prove that you're not as smart as you think you are, prove that maybe they know more than you, prove that you're incompetent or you missed something, or just to come at you as a form of attack because they don't like you. So you do need to understand that when people give a critique, it can come from those kind of two different spirits. One is sincerely feels that you're off, you're missing something, and they want to raise the issue. They have a sincere disagreement that they want to share with you, and the other just don't care what you're saying. If you say that a green traffic light means go, these people are going to disagree with you. They're contrarian. They're cynics. They're fault finders. They're nitpickers. That's a different category of people, right? So understanding all that, let me first say, you want to make sure that whoever this person is, let's say you're in a community meeting, and let's say that you took a position that, you know what, even though we're nationalistic and Pan-African, and even though we don't necessarily support the Democratic or Republican Party, given all that's going on in this political climate, given what Donald Trump represents and will try to do if he gets elected, vote for Kamala Harris. Vote for them, not necessarily because you think they're the best candidate, but as a political strategy and tactic to keep Trump out of office. And let's say you're saying that in your community meeting, you're going to have people say, no, man, we're nationalists. We don't support the Democrats, or we shouldn't vote for none of them. Matter of fact, black people no black people should vote. That's a critique, right? Okay, so first, before you, how could you? And then they say, well, how could you say this? And you said, before you even engage that, first thing you do, make sure that they are correctly representing what you in fact said. I can't tell you how many times people come to me and say, hey, man, I disagree. You said, I said, well, I didn't say that. I don't even engage it. We first have to clarify what was actually said, right? And you never attempt to defend or explain something you didn't say. That puts you in a position of weakness, and that's unfair because now you're defending something you didn't even say. So first, make sure the person coming at you has a very clear understanding of what you said. Oftentimes, things we think are disagreements are actually not. Sometimes people are coming at you, and because they misunderstood what you said, aren't clear on what you said and where you're coming from. They may think something's a disagreement when it's really not. They may actually agree with you. So you may have to have the discipline, the sharpness, and the patience before you go further. Say, hold on, this is actually what I said, and make sure that's clear. If there's still a disagreement or critique, then you address it. But you have to make sure that they understand what you said. Now, if you believe that the person's critique is valid, is invalid, if you believe they're off, you believe that it's wrong or whatever, their point of view, it's ahistorical, it's apolitical, then you have the right to tell them that. You have the right to correct them. However, I would strongly suggest that you be careful in how you do that, because if you do it defensively or argumentatively or in a combative way, then that turns into an argument. And once you begin the argument, then what happens is people go back home, they go back talking on the phone with their friend. Yeah, you know what? But this Agyei, he told me. And now, instead of we had a disagreement, he shared his point of view, I shared mine, it becomes he's arrogant, think he know it all, and he's disrespectful, and that's what you don't want, right? You want people to be able to say, when you've had your discussion with them, even if they disagree still, that you were respectful and that even if you disagree with what they're saying, you explained why intelligently. Okay. Also, don't be the type of person that feels you got to be overly coddling with people. Like, tell them, like, no, I disagree with that. I understand what you're saying, but let me explain myself. Don't feel you got to keep going, and make it come a point where it's irreconcilable. Now, before I go on, I got a very important thing I want to show you, family, because it is important. Hold on 1 second. I want to share something with you. That is importante. Let's see here. Hold on. Let's try to bring this thing up. Be patient, family. Be patient. And if I can't, then I just won't. All right. I'm going to leave that alone. So let me get back to what we were saying. And again, I want to thank you all for coming out. We want to remind you that you are watching Harlem Liberation School, the online version on YouTube. We certainly ask that you subscribe if you have not already. We are really happy to say that, man. We've gotten like probably more than 400 subscribers in the last month. So the channel is growing exponentially. And that is because of you. And we appreciate that. We really appreciate that. So now, let me get back to what we were saying. Let me put this up so everybody's clear on what we are talking about. And let me give you a little ticker down here. If you want to support the channel, you can go to our Cash App and you will hit us up at the handle $TRUSELF 143. Okay? So now let us get back to responding to critiques. So I went over a few things. Let me say this. If somebody comes to you with a critique that's completely, you believe that's not a valid critique. That's actually wrong. You know, and it's hard to say someone's opinion is wrong. There's sometimes when somebody is saying something that cannot be supported with history, politics, it just doesn't make sense. You have the right to tell them, well, for this reason, I hear what you're saying, but I disagree with that particular critique for this reason. Calmly and intelligently. You don't have to go on for hours. You just state what you feel, whatever, and that's it. Don't get upset. Now, if the critique that somebody's giving you is valid, is valid, but you still disagree with it, right? You both still disagree with each other. I would suggest that you give them time to explain their point of view without interrupting. Then I would suggest that you explain your position and ask that they don't interrupt you. And if you still can't reconcile your disagreement, then just tell them, look, we just disagree. It's okay. What you're saying is valid. I think what I'm saying is valid, but we just see things differently. And you should tell them that's okay. In this country, people make disagreement so bad. And the truth of the matter is, if you're a community leader or an activist, you're somebody that's always coming up with proposals, suggestions, you're an advisor, you're a coach, you're a counselor, whatever, people are going to disagree with you. Don't take that personally, right? Even when people mean it personally, don't take it personally, is what I'm trying to say. Don't get too defensive. Know that that's what it is. Help people understand some inventions, some noble ideas, some political movements were strengthened, were created as a result of disagreement. That disagreement, when it's done in a healthy and respectable manner, can lead to great ingenuity, improvement, and even social political movements. For instance, the Black Power movement emerges because of people like Brother Malcolm, his ideas. He's killed and he's assassinated in 1965. A lot of young people, college students and 20 somethings are listening to him and teens. And when he's killed, they're like, man, Brother Malcolm taught us so much. He has us thinking in a different way. He's being critical of imperialism and colonialism. He's being critical of capitalism. He's talking about we need an African-centered identity. We need to return to our source. He's saying that we should not be thinking identically to those oppressing us. He's saying we need our own institutions. He didn't get to do all that. But damn it, in his death, in his absence, we're going to carry out what he didn't get to carry out, right? But the Black Power movement also comes from a bunch of former activists in the civil rights movement who were young, who felt that this movement was going to produce freedom, justice, and equality, and much to their dissatisfaction found that in many ways it did not produce what it set out to produce. So a lot of people got involved with this Black Power movement, and this Black Power movement becomes a big thing in the 60s and 70s because people are disgruntled. People had what? Disagreement with the civil rights movement, with people like King, right? So if you've seen Eyes on the Prize, a civil rights documentary, which you really should see if you haven't, there's a segment where they have Dr. King walking right next to Stokely Carmichael. He later became Kwame Ture, but back then he was Stokely Carmichael, and they're walking in this march. Thousands of people behind them walking on this march, right? And the reporter asked Dr. King, "What do you think about? Do you think nonviolence is still the way?" He's like, "Yeah," and he's explaining why. He goes to Stokely Carmichael, "What do you think?" He said, "No, sir, it's not the way." And they're having a disagreement right there, and it's nothing ugly. Nothing ugly. He said, "No, nonviolence isn't working." So a lot of the Black Power movement itself comes out of fundamental political disagreements with the foundational principles of civil rights. this idea that we could just kind of reform the United States, this kind of idea that we can do this non-violently, this idea that America is our home and our country and this and that. Black power is coming from a nationalist point of view, right? So remind people, when people disagree with you, tell them, okay, you know what? We can't reconcile this because I hear what you said, I understand what you're saying, I still disagree. You hear what I'm saying, you understand what I'm saying, you still disagree. It's okay, we disagree. I tell people, okay, so we disagree, and it's okay. The water still flow, the sun still shines. It's all right. But now the question is, what are we going to do with this disagreement? What are we going to do with it? Is this going to become something that creates divisiveness between us? Or are we going to be mature enough to understand that we can use disagreement to create or to better articulate our positions, to come up with new positions, to even come up with social political movement? We can still work together and we can still respect each other despite our disagreement. That's the thing you want to get to, right? So I don't want to go on and on with this, but that's kind of what I want to say. That there's a way we handle critique and criticism, understanding that some people's critique and criticism is valid. Even if we disagree with it, we got to say, well, yeah, there's truth to that. I gotta take that into account. I can't dismiss it. You gotta understand that some people come out of sincerity, that they don't mean no harm, no foul, but they disagree legitimately with what we're saying. And we got to understand that some people don't like you. They don't like what you said just because you said it. It's personal with them. They're trying to attack you. I can't tell you how many times I've dealt with that from friends and foes alike. You may get under people's skin, it happens. It's natural too. But don't take it personal. Be patient and make sure that you give the person time to explain what they got to say. Don't interrupt them. And you do the same. And again, if you can't reconcile that, then just say, well, we disagree on that. That's okay. See you at the next meeting. That don't mean nothing changes. It just means we disagree on that. You'd be surprised at how many important movements. For instance, in the civil rights movement, there were people who disagreed on strategy and tactics. There were some people who felt that we should focus on the law, and the way that we fight racism and white supremacy and segregation is through these court battles, trying the legal approach like the NAACP. And there were other people that was like, nah, we need direct action. In other words, nonviolent direct marches and protests and sit-ins. And the legal thing ain't going to do that. We got to use our bodies physically and pose a challenge to people, right? And then there were people who were civil rights activists who later became Black Power movement activists who said, no, your whole thing is wrong. We shouldn't even see this as our country. This is a country we were brought to against our will. Nobody ever asked us if we wanted to be citizens. We should be working on our own nation, right? Do what we got to do while we're here, but we should be ultimately building our own infrastructure, our own institutions, our own nation, right? So all of those were disagreements, but they were still a civil rights movement. People didn't say, well, we disagree, so we're just not going to do anything, fight racism and white supremacy. And the same thing in the Black Power movement. Some of the nationalists was like, if we just return to Africa, if we speak African languages, if we dress in African garb, if we kind of go back to African practices, we did it. Somebody say, no, that ain't enough. Somebody say, I don't care how you dress and what you're talking about. We got to change the political structure here. Some people say we got to change the political structure, but we should try to reform it. And some people said, no, we should destroy it. The whole thing got to go. And we got to rebuild it. And some people said, no, you waste your time reforming it and trying to destroy it and rebuild it. We need to go elsewhere and build our own separate nation. So just understand, family, disagreement is not a bad thing. It's only quote unquote bad when it is handled in a way that's unhealthy, when it is toxically presented and toxically responded to. Learn to see disagreement and critique as your best friends. Brother Malcolm has a quote, which I don't know verbatim, but paraphrasing, it says, if you don't appreciate critique, you'll never grow. Because that's where you learn where what you're thinking needs help, right? You need to do more research. You need get more experience. You need to have change your perspective. So it helps you to go back, do more research, defend your position better, right? Um, Articulate what you believe. And it also helps you when somebody coming at you in a way that's inappropriate and disrespectful. It helps you keep your light sword from getting rusty. In other words, it teaches you how to fight better, right? How to more effectively deal with people coming at you incorrectly. And I find one of the best ways to do that is to hear what people have to say what you got to say. And if you just disagree, just say, look, we just disagree. It's okay. Let's move on to the next point. Right? It's all right. We're not gonna, the earth ain't gonna end because you and I see this issue differently. You have the right to, and tell people you have the right to disagree, and I have the right to disagree with your disagreement. In other words, help people see this for what it is. Don't, if the leaders and community organizers have to take a lead position on this, because once again, we're the only way that you escape being critiqued and criticized is if you do nothing. Because then nobody has anything to critique. The people they're going to critique are the people who are constantly giving their opinion, right? Agreeing with something, disagreeing with something, sharing a point of view or perspective, giving their rendition or interpretation of history, doing, sharing an idea, trying to sell you on a particular point of view, a proposal, what have you. So the only people that will escape that in this lifetime, people who do nothing, who play it safe, who just say, I'm not going to say nothing. I'm not gonna do it. Well, yeah, there's nothing to critique. But those of you who, like myself, do have an opinion on things, do feel there's a better way to approach things and a less desirable way to approach it. There's a more effective way to get things done and a less effective way to do it. You are going to be targets for critiquing and criticism, some of which will be fair and level-headed, some of which will be completely irrational and personal and negative, right? And you have to be prepared for both. But never get defensive. Don't take it personal. Just smile and say, that's part of this. All it's going to do is make you a better critical thinker. And again, you should be anticipating parts of your argument, parts of your belief system, parts of your proposal that are vulnerable to attack, right? And you should find the weak spots and you should have prepared responses. You should be able to critique yourself. Look at what you believe and critique it. Act as if you're your own worst enemy, and go through what you believe and attack it. And everything that you come up with is a point of attack. Do your research, do your critical thinking, and come up with responses to make what you believe stronger. And with that said, family, I hope that was helpful. Again, I want to just remind you that we do have this new book out called Wukusu. And I think I am going to see if I can put that on a ticker for those of you who want to support. So far, it's been a good response to the book. People are purchasing the book off Amazon now, and that is good because from now to the 16th, the book will be $13.99. Once we get to August 17th, that book will be its normal price, $19.99. So you can save a few dollars, not only because when you add the $6 and the shipping and handling, that can come out to be more than $10, $11 difference. So, family, I just want to thank you all for watching and for listening. I want this to be more interactive. So when you hear that we're coming on with a broadcast, have questions, have comments, have critiques. If you feel you don't agree with something, that's no problem. That's what we're here to do, is to help build each other up and make sure that we play our part. This generation plays its part in this iteration of the Black Liberation Movement, because we know the Black Liberation Movement goes back to the first African that the white man came and claimed and took to the shores and held them and then put them on slave ships to bring them to the Caribbean and the so-called New World to be enslaved peoples. It began with the first people they got, because those people fought back, jumped off ships. They had mutinies, which meant they fought right on those slave ships, and some of them tried to get command of the ship and go back to Africa. Of course, they couldn't, many of them, but they fought. So we should play our part. And part of playing our part in the liberation movement is to understand that when we have political discussion, when we're sharing ideas, when we're talking about how we should handle this election coming up, when we're talking about how we should deal with Donald Trump, whether or not we should vote for Kamala Harris or not, whether we should just get our ticket, airline tickets, and leave the country and go live somewhere else. We have to be able to discuss those things, and we have to leave room to disagree and to see things differently. Oftentimes, through the disagreement comes a better understanding. Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, meaning through that sort of tension of disagreement, if handled in a healthy way, we can come to a better understanding. With that said, family, thank you for listening and watching. Have a blessed day. Peace and Black Power with Kusu. We'll see you next time. You know that on the 13th at 7 p.m., we're going to have my brother, Knowledge Born Allah, and he's going to be dropping it, family. His brother is doing big things with Do the Knowledge Radio. He's producing stuff. He's doing documentaries, he's writing some ebooks. He's really wearing a lot of hats and doing a lot of work on our behalf. So check him out here live at Harlem Liberation School on YouTube. That's brother Knowledge Born Allah. We can't wait to see him and hear what he has to say. Peace and Black Power, family.